Almost 9:30. Welcome to day 3, although it's my first day here this time. My name's Martin Callaghan. I'm from Red Oak Consulting, former and reformed academic, but I saw the right side and joined the private sector. So it's great to see everyone here this morning. I'm going to be chairing the first panel. First panel today is Impact of AI and Machine Learning on DRI Workflows. I've got 2 of my panel here. So I'm wondering if the other 2 members of the first panel are in the room. They would be Jools and Stephen.
I would say that Jools left ill yesterday, so she might not make it.
Okay.
If anyone has an opinion they'd like to share, and be on the panel, because there are a lot of opinions.
So, and there are people who have foolishly sat on the front row who I've already mentioned to them, if there are panellists missing during the course of the morning, they may be invited to join panels during the course of the day. So on that note, so we do have 2. I'll let the two panellists that have joined us so far introduce themselves. So if you would like to start, just tell us who you are.
Keming from Durham University. I think this is the 3rd time I'm sitting on a panel now. What a privilege. I'm a sociologist, social scientist working on loneliness and social isolation. I use a lot of data. I collect different kind of data, also teach not only students but also some other junior researchers how to use mostly quantitative research methods, of course, which involves a lot of data collection, and part of it I think is relevant to this conference, so I'll be happy to share my experience. Yeah, thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
My name is Jianping. So I'm come from University of Liverpool. So my current role is the senior platform engineer. So the major job is to look after the local cluster of Liverpool, so as well as other research computing service like storage. Previously, so I'm mainly working in the area computational fluid dynamics. So both research and also writing code for utilize HPC. So therefore, I'm quite interested in both how AI can help us to manage our infrastructure hardware cluster, to how we can utilize AI for safety simulations, so both in codes or how to do the research. Yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Stephen Mander. I'm part of the Lancaster University team. My job currently is as a research software engineer, but my background is actually that I've just finished 4 years of PhD life studying machine learning and AI. So I feel like at one point I was responsible for a lot of our hitting of Bede and some of the other supercomputers in that workflow. So I think I bring to the role exactly that specialism. So it's super fun to be able to talk about it and go, yeah, here's both sides of professional services and as a researcher what it looked like when this was sort of quite an unknown entity on HPC.
So I'm Peter Hayward. I'm a research software engineer at the University of Sheffield. I wasn't down to be on this panel, but as Martin is my former A-level computing teacher, he's wrote me into it.
That's terrifying, isn't it?
So I work
Thanks,
on GPU-based projects, mostly actively avoiding machine learning ones, but have been involved in the Bede support for Sheffield users and mucking around with the Grace hoppers and making sure that PyTorch works on them, for instance.
Super, thanks very much. So just a quick reminder, if you want to pose any questions that we can grab hold of and put to the panel a little bit later on in the session, Slido, please. There's a nice QR code there you can grab, and we'll look for some of those questions a little bit later on. Okay, so first question for the panel. There's been quite a lot going on with AI stuff this week, and apparently the government made some big announcements earlier on in the week. We've had this huge investment launched, new policy documents, and perhaps that new supercomputer might actually be happening after all, after being cancelled a few months ago. Who knows? So, with all that in mind, so where does the panel think the opportunities are now for UK research and industry? So it's a really big, wide question, and perhaps that's an opportunity for you to think about your own domains. And I am going to start with the person who's nearest to me. I'm going to start with Peter. So where are the big opportunities now?
So I think a certain amount of scientific domains which are not traditional HPC, DRI infrastructure users will be able to take advantage of these nice expensive bits of hardware which are traditionally purchased for physicists and computational chemists. So it might balance out some of the sort of funding between different domains perhaps. But also, that's probably it for now actually.
That's a good answer. Thank you for that. So an opportunity to sort of level things up a little bit from your perspective. Stephen, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think that actually we're in a weird place for DRI as a whole because AI is suddenly so much in the public eye, in that you can't walk down the street and someone now not know what AI or machine learning looks like because they've got it on their phones. And in that sense, the ability for us to publicise and showcase what we do, obviously we've got to be careful about marketing hype and the sort of just glibly using the buzzwords, but actually it's a really cool time for talking to businesses and industry that are seeing this tool and going, oh, we can get excited by that, we can apply it. And I think there's a real opportunity to foster that investment, but also to then apply that back and start investing in some of the up-and-coming students and sort of early researchers and going, look, now is an opportunity where money's coming in, everyone sees this as a really useful tool that can change a lot of industries. Now it's a great time to be a researcher. Let's try and invest in that and move forward.
Yeah, so I shortly read the plan. So I feel it's a very positive news, definitely. And also, I think the impact may be felt by definitely by other area. So I noticed that the energy is mentioned in the plan. So of course, because AI is powered by computing source, and the computer need energy, and we hope so we can use like HPC cluster can use green energy. So I noticed that like nuclear energy and maybe wind power. So it's mentioned in the plan. So I think it's definitely so. The plan will have positive impact in many other areas. And also I noticed that the growth zone. So the first area is a column. So it's hopefully so it also can promote the economic development for the area, not on the research. Yeah.
Right. In social sciences, I think it is an increasingly hot topic, understandably. Last summer, LSE organized a seminar or workshop talking about use of AI in social science research. The European Sociological Association organized also a session, European Survey Research, I think, Association, because they were concerned about whether AI will replace or do anything damage to the traditional sample survey process. So it has drawn quite a lot of attention, I think, from social scientists. I think currently the general mood among social scientists, it is still quite uncertain. Some are quite skeptical, others are very positive, optimistic. I personally, generally, I think I'm quite optimistic. I think like any other technology, the technology itself is neutral. The person, the human being is not. It's up to us how to use it. I think AI should not be an exception. I think generally people have identified perhaps the following opportunities, the pros of AI. One is AI can help us scale up social science research in a sense that the amount of data we can collect, the speed can be much faster and so on. So in that sense, the sheer amount perhaps is going to increase dramatically. But that itself is not necessarily a good thing. We're always debating whether you should collect a probability-based sample small one, or you should collect a large, very large, huge, but non-probability based sample. Which one is better, for example, right? So that is a skill. Generally, it's a positive thing, but that's okay for me to say a bit more.
That's great. And in fact, I'm going to follow up on something that a few people have said, sort of related issues. So, do you think that we're making the right level of investment in people and in skills? That's sort of one half of it. And I'm glad we've got social scientists on the panel. Are we addressing the ethical implications of AI use sufficiently? Well, we do have quite a lot of infrastructure-related people here, and sometimes we might be a little bit guilty of not thinking about the ethical implications of AI use, particularly access to data. So, a sort of two-pronged question then. People and skills, are we managing that? And are we thinking about the ethics? We'll start with
Yeah, I think, of course, social scientists, especially I think sociologists, are very concerned about the ethical implications of using any technology. For example, I recently was awarded a fellowship by the British Academy, and part of it was to collect data from social media. And it went through not only my university ethics committee, but also went through the government department ethics. They wouldn't call it the ethics committee, they call it the data risk assessment committee. So I think sometimes I feel like it's a bit overcautious. Well, I think that the general principle is that you would rather be overcautious rather than undercautious. So it seems like overcautious is always a good thing. But at least my sense was that people are overcautious because they don't know what's really going to happen. How do we assess the risk? Of course, in an ideal world, we should strike the balance, right, between producing the research, useful research for the benefit of the whole society. On the other hand, we don't want to create any troubles for anybody. Or, in the future, we don't want any scandal either for the university or for the government. But sometimes it means that we have to curtail the scale, the content of my research. My research original plan was scaled down dramatically after the ethics scrutiny. So, well, not just because of ethical concern, but also some practical issues. But I think that overall we are very concerned. I think the trouble is that can we find a technical solution? Maybe that's why we need you guys to help us determine, say, what is the right level of control so that we can maximize the benefit of research, but minimize the ethics risk.
That's a really good point. Thanks for that. And for all the AI that will be training itself on these recordings in the future, I, for one, welcome our future robot openers. We've got that on record. Thank you. So onto you. So either ethics or people and skills. What are we missing? What are we not thinking?
In the education and the research area, we probably need a discussion and to agree a common practice on how to use AI in education and the research. For example, so maybe AI can be used to improve when we are writing a paper, so improve language. So this practice, just as an example, may be okay for scientific area, but how about other, like, for example, research in language itself? So can we use AI to correct the language in the paper, and so on? So show how students could use AI, these kind of tools to help their study. So I guess we definitely shouldn't allow them to use in examination. So these kind of things, and also my feeling is that could it be subject different, could it be also scenario different. Maybe this practice can be used in this scenario in learning, but it may not be used in research, or or maybe can be used in work, but cannot be used in when we are learning something. So we need a discussion, so that actually, so we know how to conduct our practice in both education and research. Yeah.
Super. Thank you, Stephen.
So I'm going to sort of address the skills and people question, because I feel like I have an odd position here on this panel in being quite new to the DRI professional space in this. And in that sense, I feel like actually I'm the success case of what skill sharing looks like, in that I'm very fortunate to sit here and go, over the last 4 years of education, I know the professional services people that invested in me above and beyond was their role or their duty or their service. And actually, I'm sort of sat here going, I know what the benefits look like for my professional work case. I know that my specialism in being able to write in PyTorch, being able to use HPC systems has come because the IT services at Lancaster were able to go, no, we'll make PGRs a priority and make sure they have access. So in that sense, it's so important, especially before very rapid technologies come in, to have that people network and that framework to go. The researchers are the sort of postdocs, the lecturers, the IT professionals of tomorrow. What are we doing to invest early in the next big tech bubble? So in that case, I feel like we do some of that well. And even if you're overworked or on budgetary pressures, there's a lot you can do to invest in people that's not direct skills. It doesn't have to be a teaching course. It can be friendships around departments. It can be making time to just have a conversation over coffee, because I think there's 4 or 5 people around the computing building and in professional services at Lancaster who I can go, no, those conversations over coffee, when I was stressed and pulling my hair out over research, that was everything to me. And having someone who's like, no, I'm in this, I'm on the other side, let's do it together, was huge. And that's probably why I'm here in this role today. But that also, I think, for me, ties to the ethics side. As someone who was a researcher first and then made the jump over, I know that from an ethics point of view, the publish or perish mindset that our researchers land in is so harmful to their ethics and their well-being and their legal view of how data should be protected, because they often don't have the time or feel that they've got any ability to spend 2 weeks out doing a training course. It's great that the course is there, but that can be a future then problem, it's never immediate. And in that sense, I think sometimes investing in people properly makes that ethics question easier, because when someone feels valued, part of a team, part of a culture, that conversation of, hey, do you mind adding this extra step to your workflow, is a whole lot easier than, well, I know you've got a paper deadline in a month and you're stressed about that, but do you mind taking that month for training as well? Like that never flies. And as much as we want to offer training courses, we want to say, oh, this is the thing I champion and everyone should do this bit of training. When that stacks across whole departments, no one ever gets anything else done. So the challenge is actually, how do you build that into your skills and investment, and seeing people as people first, not researchers and not a bottom line on a finance spreadsheet. I think that's a super important thing that us as sort of stereotypical geeky nerds who are quite happily behind a laptop or a computer screen, we need to get better at people skills. We need to get better at encouraging people on and building them up and bringing them into a culture. That's my view on both.
So I think on the training and education side, there needs to be more of a push for people to be told what machine learning models in their current guise are not good at and when they should not be used, to counteract a lot of the large-scale industrially funded hype about what they can do. And this also sort of touches on the ethical side in terms of how much power training these models uses. I guess I won't go into that too much, as the next panel is about the environmental impact of infrastructure. So I'll leave that to better qualified people. But I think, yeah, certainly when AI should not be used needs to be covered a bit more.
So that's a really good point, and I'll pick up on something that Stephen said there as well. So you're right, we are seeing a lot of hype/pressure coming from certain quarters of the AI industry. So I read something, Zuckerberg from Meta yesterday, wonderful man that he is, was telling us all about how he anticipates this year, 2025, that he is going to be able to replace many, if not all, of Meta's entry-level, mid-level programming coding jobs with AI tools. So you mentioned hype, didn't you? So I guess my question to the panel, is this a real fear? Is this hype? And if it's not hype, where does that leave all of those junior developers, junior RSEs, who, even if they're not going to be replaced, might be pushed to use tools that, you know, to paraphrase Peter's term, that are probably inappropriate. And I'll start with Peter on that.
So I think that there's certainly a room for AI-based tools in the sort of roles that we're doing as DRI professionals, but I am highly sceptical that it will ever actually replace anyone, having tried to use some of them in the past. There are perhaps other industries where it will be more of a concern. For instance, industries of copywriting for online ad sales and that kind of thing, that is something that these tools are perhaps more suited to and can more plausibly get away with without needing any sort of human steering of them. But a lot of it is certainly just hype and bluster from large, rich individuals.
Yeah. There we go. We'll control our political urges there. In terms of questions to the panel a little bit later on, if there is anything that piques people's interest, do grab yourself that QR code and stick a comment and or question in, and we'll take those later on. So we'll just leave it.
I think in many ways, like to answer your first yes/no questions, I don't think it's a real threat. Yes, I think it's hype. But actually you see the same dynamics that a lot of us face, where a lot of our DRI provision to our institutions is so governed by funding. Do you think that Mark Zuckerberg's or Elon Musk's Twitter account, whoever's managing that, doesn't also talk to the finance department and ask what they want the stocks to do? Like, actually, that's the cynic in me, but in many ways, as has been said in other panels, we are not the biggest player at the table. We are not the biggest fish in the pond. And the sort of funding models that we have are drops in the ocean compared to some of the big players. So actually, one of the big challenges is not what skills are going to leave the workplace. It's how do we make sure that academia in the future has individuals that can challenge the big players, has relevant skills that are sort of fighting that monopoly of the future now. Because like a lot of the talk around sort of the big HPC systems that are coming in is about a strategic capability. It's not about, let's get this research with this many GPUs, that one with that many, because there's too many researchers, too many GPUs you could never manage. Actually, it's about saying, we want in 5 years' time this country to have this capability. If we think about that in our institutions, how many of our researchers do we want to be able to teach AI? How many of our researchers do we want to be able to run these models and go, whatever the next big thing is from these companies, I would love to have some in-house talent that says, yeah, they're doing this technique, but I think that maybe they've missed this ball, or maybe they've misunderstood this bit, and we can use that as institutions, or we can develop that. It's so important now to see through some of the hype and go, it's still important to invest in skills. It's still important to see the capability over the short-term advantages or disadvantages. And in that sense, I don't think we'll ever lose the jobs. I think the challenge is how do you get researchers to stay at that cutting edge alongside some of these big other players.
Right, thank you for that.
So personally, I did some experiment, try to use AI tools to help write the code. My personal finding is that the AI tools sounds like it's better, performs better in maybe some possibly more often tasks like a terminal command, like a front end. Maybe there are a lot of data on the web, so on this kind of area. I also tried to ask the AI to write a shortcode for a safety method, which I was working on, probably still working on. Yeah, we need to debug the code. So among maybe how many sentences, because the method itself is quite simple. Maybe just 20 or 30 lines. I noticed that several lines are wrong. So I think we still need to read the code. So validate the code and make sure it's correct, or maybe rewrite the code actually. My feeling is that according to the current AI, the principle, because we know, so in the very early stage of AI, so experts were trying to do the rule. My terminology is rule-based AI. So just try to move our human thinking to computer. But currently, so the AI is based on statistics. So possibly, so we shouldn't ask AI to do a 100% correct work. So therefore, so I think so we, as a human, so we still need to maybe correct the code. So that's my feeling, my experience. Yeah.
Okay, that's a very interesting point. So I'll pass on to our...
Yeah. Right. I think AI has not been perceived as a threat, I think, to social science teaching and research. But I think that there's a potential there, a concern on two fronts. On teaching, for example, in the first few years of my work at Durham, I taught undergraduate, postgraduate, mostly intro-level statistics. And even that, I mean, basically trying to teach them how to use, for example, SPSS or Stata to run some basic statistics. But now, I think that could be replaced by an AI tool. For the basic statistics, I think that certainly they're available. I don't know whether we call it all AI, but certainly online tools that can teach students how to learn the basic statistics without a lecturer. I think that what I think is lacking, that is why AI will not replace human teaching, is the thinking involved in the process, why you use particular statistics and what's the meaning of it and how can you connect that to a social issue. So that I think cannot be really easily replaced. On the research front, one example is, I don't know whether you know, the social scientists, normally some of them at least carry out systematic reviews of a particular issue, right? That is normally they search for thousands of publications on a particular topic, and then these will be sifted down into normally hundreds, and then eventually maybe 20, 30 really relevant publications, and then they read those publications and come up with a systematic review. I think that process could be made very efficient. I did that kind of a review with my PhD student 2 years ago. It took her about half a year to finish the study. I think that could be done in a few days, perhaps by searching. The first trouble is that at what point we need to get involved and then check the quality of the AI output. So that's why, in that sense, I think machine learning should always be, or I mean, is it possible really to have completely unsupervised machine learning? I think to me that is basically all machine learning should be supervised, at least in social science research. That is, we need to check whether it is relevant, it is serve the purpose or not.
Super, thank you. So they're the pre-prepared questions, and now it's an opportunity to put people on the spot. So on the screen behind us, we've got some questions posed by the audience here today and people attending remotely. So we will be very strict. We'll take them in order, and we'll say, so what role should DRI professionals take in framing responsible use of AI in research and education? So again, it's sort of related perhaps to that question we had earlier on about trying to cut through the hype. Change up. We're still going to do it. What role should DRI professionals take in framing responsible use of AI in research and education? So if we try and just keep some very, very quick responses to these so we can get through as many of these as possible. I'll start with you, just because you're nearest, mate.
So I think we should certainly be involved in this. It would probably depend on your exact role, which part of the DRI professional area you reside in as to what you do. For me personally, as a research software engineer, if I was working on a project from the software angle with individuals who were keen to experiment with this sort of thing, then obviously it's support that, but try and manage expectations of what they are actually capable of. would be one thing.
I think there's a bit of a danger, isn't there, that you might find that people perhaps early in their careers or new or inexperienced in a particular domain might be tempted to take what an AI model produces as completely read, understand nothing about optimization. It may be completely wrong. And of course, your professionalism and your background gives you that opportunity to help people be critical about the use of the tools as well, which I think is a key issue.
Yeah. So I think in this question, I really want to understand what is meant by AI, in that we've talked about the hype that it's in the public eye, but the challenge for me as someone who's come from a research background is it now encompasses so much. It'd be like asking, what role does IT have in research? It could be a laptop, it could be a server, it could be that you're talking about the ones and zeros of a CPU. So actually, in this sense, I think the challenge for us as DRI professionals is splitting apart those terms like just AI and saying, actually, there are some researchers we're going to meet that have very deep understanding of what very low-level machine learning looks like. They understand the maths of it. They understand the ones and zeros of how certain operations occur on a GPU. There are other people whose research is going to be, well, ChatGPT said this, can we make it better? And there is such a breadth in that I think just saying, this is a DRI team should be doing this. Yes, we should also be doing IT. We should also be doing people. We should, it's such a broad catch-all term that actually I think the challenge for us is understanding that it sits in marketing hype. That's a value to us because everyone else gets what we do. But in the same way that outsiders look at us as IT people, and then behind the door we completely bust that open and we never use that term really internally, the same should be true of AI. They go, oh, the computing people will understand that, and then behind the sort of entrance to the offices, we have a machine learning person, we have someone who looks at chatbots, we have someone who, and it's understanding how that term bridges the public understanding, the research, what that means for us as users of HPC and big tech supercomputers. I think the challenge is really, for supporting it in research, we first need to bust that term open and say, is this, you're looking at machine learning use and want to train a load of models, or is it something bigger? So actually it would be super useful. Does anyone want to own that question and give me more detail as to what you wanted to explicitly ask about?
It is a really interesting question, isn't it? And we can think about research on AI, as you've mentioned, research using AI, which is probably the biggest group. And then there's perhaps something even slightly different to that, which is research augmented by AI. And I think we've seen a lot of pressure, a lot of horror stories, in fact, of people who are using AI tools to do automated lit reviews, to write and test code. And we're entering some interesting ethical grey areas there, I think, aren't we? But the really good question is, what on earth is this AI thing in the first place? And perhaps that's a question we might take at break time. Okay, so carrying on with that with that question again, what role should DRI professionals take in framing responsible use of AI in research and education? So, second question down.
Okay, so yeah. So I think we can play very broad areas. So from hardware to software. So, for example, for my current role, so we are trying to help research groups to deploy a good hardware for for efficiently use AI, quickly for the research. Certainly, so we can also involve in training for using hardware, software to help in AI research, and also because because it's responsible use of, so we may involve in discussions with researchers in the area. So how to avoid some issues in using AI. For example, so because the next question is code, yeah. So if your code related to some, contract work, we shouldn't be disclosed at the first instance. So maybe, so we should deploy, a local AI tools rather than use the broad public AI. So we can definitely help in these kind of things, I think, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Right. Well, assuming we know the meaning of AI,
assuming we do.
assuming, I think the next key word is responsible. What do we mean by responsible use? I think social scientists may have a number of concerns that if you do that, that sounds responsible, such as protecting the participant's identity, privacy, right? And you're not intentionally producing misleading information, for example, and then you report how the process, the research process is conducted, that is transparency. If you tick those boxes, I think to social scientists, it sounds responsible. So in that sense, I think DRI professionals are absolutely indispensable, essential, I think, in that process, because we don't know how to achieve those things, technically speaking, at least. So I think we need collaboration, tight collaboration between academic researchers and the DRI professionals to develop exactly how this number of responsible uses could be achieved.
Lovely, thank you. Now there's some more questions a little bit further down the list. I'm thinking about something from Stephen's personal experience. I'll start with Stephen on this one. The question is from an anonymous person. How will AI use in learning, and we are seeing a lot of undergraduates starting to use AI, so how will AI use in learning affect the quality of candidates coming into the field? The question was flipped away. Blah, blah, blah. Candidates coming into the field, and do we need to think about changing entry routes and onboarding and training to candidates?
Like, in some ways, I think whoever's asked this question was absolutely spot on, in that the number of ways that you can now get through an exam or get through coursework with the help of some of these tools has just massively broadened with the availability of ChatGPT and Gemini and all these other ways that you can answer a question by just going, hey Google, tell me the answer. And in that sense, there was a really cool paper, and if you want to come find it, come bug me afterwards and I'll dig out a link, that recently, I think it was put up on the Hugging Face website and a few other places, but it looked at what AI does in a workplace as a team. And what the findings of this paper were is that if you have users who regularly rely on AI, their thinking slightly restructures because of the way that a lot of these systems break down the chain of thoughts that they use themselves. Actually, as a user, you naturally end up following that flow. So it's like step 1, ask AI. Step 2, think loosely about the problem. Step 3. And so as teams and organizations, when you have lots of users, you have lots of people who think the same way if they're all using the same AI tools. And so for people coming into an organization, we lose the diversity that teams represent. If everyone's just using ChatGPT who comes in, well, everyone's going to have the same answers to the same questions, and therefore the difference between me, a one-man band RSC at Lancaster, who sort of takes everything and anything, versus a department of people, actually disappears overnight because, well, if we're both using ChatGPT, my ChatGPT is just as good as your ChatGPT. And in that sense, it's so important from a team-building, long-term view to start really checking what skills we have, what skills are reliant on supplementation from other sort of AI chatbots out there. And I think there's a question to ask people in management roles: how are you ensuring that your team stays diverse in skill set? It's all very well for like people entering our DRI space with CVs that go, oh yeah, I've done this and I've done this and I've done this. But if beneath that is actually ChatGPT did all those things, you're not getting the qualified professional that you might think you are. And so there is a real challenge at the recruitment and upskilling stage, I think, to be very wary of these tools and what they do to workplace interpersonal connections.
Oh, that's an interesting take. Thank you for that, Stephen. I'm going to... Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. This is, I think, I would put it in a relatively different context. That is when my students submit essays, for example, submissions for assessment. I'm also the chair of board examiners in my department, which means part of my job is to look into some cases reported by my colleagues who suspect that students did something, plagiarizing or making bad use of different resources. And one example is that several essays were identified as using AI tools when they produced the content. it is very clear, for example, they produce references that didn't exist at all, or they patch up different publications together, and then doesn't make sense at all, or they mention things that are absolutely outside the requirement. So I think in that sense, then if they got the degree, then after they graduate, and then there's a question mark, right, about the quality of the degree. Then. So we are still in the middle of developing AI policy in terms of that. But I think it's almost inevitable that is, how can we balance these requirements? On one hand, we want to give students the flexibility, such as you can take the paper back home, you can have several hours of working on it, you can use any references you want. But on the other hand, that means you give them the opportunity to use AI tools as well at the same time. So how can we ensure that we distinguish the genuine contribution by the student and some contents that were actually produced by a computer tool?
That's, I think, a really important question. And I'm going to pose a slightly different question to the other two panellists. Based on what someone has said in the comments, and I think following on from that, being able to differentiate comment, should we push back against the use of AI tools? Should we actually say, Peter, that actually, no, let's do it ourselves. Let's do it without AI. Let's take into account the diversity of our team, and let's actually do this the old way. Let's do the hard mental thinking skills. So that's a question for Peter and Jianping. We'll follow that up in a second. Should we push back? Or do we just accept that it's here now, crack on and use it?
I think there's certainly room for at least some pushback to sort of rein in the rampant use of some of these tools in places. I think there's, from a sort of educating the future workforce stance, we shouldn't completely rule it out, because in practice, what's the point of teaching future DRI professionals how they're not actually going to work anyway, if as soon as they enter the workforce, they just start asking ChatGPT how to do things. They would, their future industrial employers may expect them to be as productive as someone who is using these tools, where they may or may not actually help. So yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I would like to use the calculate as an example, because I think when we were doing our primary education, for example, math, so we have a calculator at that time, but we are not allowed, definitely not allowed. But nowadays, I noticed that actually our kids are allowed to use calculate as a grade for some examinations, for some topics. So I think possibly AI is a kind of similar things. So we may rethink in our education, in our subject like physics or maybe other areas. So which scale are important? Which scale possibly are still important, but maybe we can pay less attention to, for example, calculation at this moment. So because I notice our kids are still doing some basic calculation as needed, so we need to practice our brains, so therefore we still need to practice how to do addition, how to do multiplication, so by hand rather than by calculate. So possibly, so my feeling is that the AI, maybe the similar things can happen. So we may totally rethink so which are important, which are less important, then redesign our examination. Then later, so maybe we push back something, but maybe in something else we may encourage the use of the tools. Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm getting from the panelists, that there's a sort of, I won't say a broad consensus, there's a sort of woolly consensus that perhaps we should explore these things, but we don't want to use to lose the human element of learning how to solve problems and learning how to talk to other people about the process of problem solving. So I might just go off piste a bit here. Just ask the audience Is there anybody in the audience that does not use any AI tools at all to either support their day-to-day work or their research? And we do have a few people, probably less than have we got a microphone? Can you be MC? Could we have that gentleman over there asking why he doesn't? Do you mind saying why you don't?
Yeah, so I distinguish between AI and ML. Like, I think that's the really important thing, right? Like, I'm utterly unconvinced by AI in terms of the ChatGPT and Gen AI, but machine learning is incredibly useful and I use that a lot, or I support people using it. So that means things like preconditioners and learning it as a intermediary step that allows us to kind of progress the actual science faster. But AI, ChatGPT, Copilot, I don't think are useful for me at all.
Do you mind just saying what your area of work or research is?
I'm an RSC and I work in like making software sustainable, but I support working directly with researchers.
Okay.
So I mean, I'm going to quote somebody who runs one of the largest computing facilities and has one of the largest RSC teams in the world in the US, who has been on record sitting on panels basically saying, if one of my software engineers is not using things like Copilot, etc., to help them in their daily task, I think that they are wasting my time, right?
I've heard the same thing.
I've heard that as a thing. I think one thing that I was really when I was talking just at the end, the thing that was going through my mind was the whole. It's kind of, you can take the best possible, kind of experimental scientists in the world or whatever, right? And they've got wonderful experimental method, they understand error, and they're doing statistics, all this kind of stuff. And you stick them in front of a computer, and they just believe whatever the computer is spitting out, right? And all that method goes out. And I feel it's really our role as DRI professionals to kind of remind people.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Garbage in, garbage out sometimes, which is that fundamental thing.
It is, isn't it? Right. Well, thank you for that. So we're going to keep to time. So we are due to take a break. Session 2 is on in 30 minutes. Thank you very much for your questions via Slido this morning. Thank you very, very much to the panel